Our first talk for this section is by Dr. Alex Wang, who's going to talk about medications after MIGS.
All right, here are my disclosures, and here are my sources of support. So in the last 10 to 15 years, we know we have all these new glaucoma therapies. You've got new MIGS, you've got new meds. So why couldn't you put them together, right? You also know that with a lot of these new therapies, they target the conventional trabecular pathway. And this is something that we've been interested in the past, where we developed this method called aqueous angiography, where we put the tracer in the eye and using an angiographic camera, visualize where outflow is actually going. What you're looking at here is a movie of the outflow real-time of a 60-some-year-old woman getting cataract surgery in a collaboration I did with Bob Weinreb. Now, you can use these methods, and you can study things like you can study MIGS. This is a collaboration with Lila Vaskanian in Armenia, where in the top row, we introduce indocyanine green. The red arrows demonstrate regions without a whole lot of aqueous humor outflow. We place 2 trabecular bypass stents there in the blue arrows, and in the bottom row, we introduce fluorescein to query the effect, and you can see that the low flow regions in the red arrows actually were rescued back as determined by the green arrows. We can also use these methods to study meds. This is a collaboration I just came back from with Chris Gherkin down at UAB. On the top row, indocyanine green was placed into the eye, and you can see the pattern of outflow that's demonstrated by the red and green arrows. And then we added Myocol, right? FDA approved, bring the pupil down. It's acetylcholine, it's like pilocarpine. You can actually use this to lower intraocular pressure. And in the bottom row with fluorescein, you can see the impact of drugs and those 2 yellow arrows where outflow was actually improved. So, the idea is, can we put this together now? And I'll just come out and say it. There really isn't any high volume, high quality clinical trials out there about this. What there is a lot of preclinical, basic translational work that gives a lot of promise. And there's basically 3 areas that we're going to focus on. Number 1, proximal. Number 2, distal. And number 3, steroid response. So proximal first. On the left, just to remind you, aqueous is made by ciliary processes and then moves through outflow pathways, as in here with the red arrow. Now, the middle panel is very important. This is a picroserious red stain. It stains collagen. So you got cornea and you got sclera. And really what this demonstrates to you is this strip of sclera that sticks out. It shows you the scleral spur in cross-section under the TM, above the ciliary muscle, which you're already aware of from the gonioscopic view. And so what this teaches you is how this works, where this muscle grabs the scleral spur and can pull it down, open and close it like a lever to control the opening of the TM. It's how the system works. And this became relevant, at least early on, with trabecular MIGS, like things such as trabectome, and now with Cahook dual blade, which are wide berth ablations of the trabecular meshwork. And the idea there early on was that you wanted to add pilocarpine as a way to pull the scleral spur down, keep the angle open to prevent things such as PAS. Now, while we don't have a lot of data, there is some clinical results about, does pilocarpine have a benefit? This is work done by Nils Lowen. What you're looking at, minus P is no pilocarpine, plus P is with pilocarpine. IOP to your left, Kaplan-Meier survival curves to the right. This data includes concepts of trabectome alone or trabectome with phaco, and the reality is there's no difference, okay? No matter what curve you look at, there's no difference. So at least here, the conclusion is that there's no good evidence of continued use of muscarinic agonists after trabecular ablation, all right? So this is a case where it didn't work. Now, distal. You're also aware of these new drugs, such as nirtazidil as well as latanoprostein bunone. You know them as cytoskeletal relaxing agents, relaxing the trabecular meshwork, but they also impact things distally too. Makes sense, right? Nitric oxide donors we use in acute coronary spasm to open veins. Nirtazidil can also vasodilate a little bit, as you can see some red eyes, and Arthur-Sit has shown decrease in episcleral venous pressure as one way to lower intraocular pressure. So if the trabecular MIGS work by hitting the proximal region and these drugs can hit the distal region, can you have a synergistic additive effect, right? 2 + 2 is equal to 4 or 5. Now, while there's no big clinical result, and I'm sure there are actually people of you who are trying to study this, there is preclinical data suggesting the potential. So this is work that I collaborated with Dan Stamer at Duke. He has a model where the trabecular meshwork is removed, so it's a 360 trabeculotomy, like MIGS. And then he can still measure changes in outflow facility up and down in response to various drugs, telling you that this is distal biology. I'll emphasize it further. In an eye in where I have removed the trabecular meshwork 360 degrees, outflow is actually still segmental, telling you that distal biology matters. So what we did was we applied the tracers, saw where the outflow was located, and then using OCT at the same locations for aqueous veins and nearby collector channels, you can see that in response to endothelin-1, which is a known vasoconstrictor, we can actually regulate and close these things down. And then in response to nitric oxide donors, in this case DTA-NO, we can vasodilate it back. So the distal biology can be changed on top of, in this case, a 360 trabeculotomy. The results are statistically significant. When we have enough power, we're working on getting more of this. But really, this points to the idea of, can you add these drugs after MIGS now? So, while the clinical data is not quite there yet, there is promise to using distally targeted IOP-lowering drugs with trabecular MIGS, all right? Now, we're going to end on steroid response, all right? This is a messy slide, but it really is to point out to you that there is so much anecdotal stuff out there, either in the peer-reviewed literature or in throwaway journals, that after trabecular MIGS, you can still get steroid response, and it can be aggressive, and despite no data, the recommendations to taper quickly, whatever actually that means, right? So let me just remind you, right? Steroid response is you give steroids systemically or with drops, and IOP goes up. But what about glaucoma surgery? In glaucoma surgery, you do surgery, pressure drops. Now you give steroids, IOP goes up. Is this steroid response, or did your glaucoma surgery just fail? How would you know? The only way you know is you'd have to stop the steroids after the fact and then see the IOP resolve itself, suggesting that it was the steroid all along. Now, we all have our anecdotal examples. Here's mine. 50-year-old female, moderate glaucoma, I performed canaloplasty. Got her off her drops, pressure still a little bit high, but it wasn't until I completely got her off her steroids that IOP finally kind of settled to what you expect for in MIGS. So we thought this was steroid response. And we tried to study this a little bit. This is copying Abe Clark's old work with TM cells in response to steroids. The TM cells grow slow, get fat, don't move, and have cytoskeletal changes. Well, we studied scleral cells around the distal outflow pathways in response to steroids. They don't grow, get fat, don't move, and also have cytoskeletal changes. So at least with trabecular MIGS, the recommendation is a quick steroid taper. So, in conclusion, the future ahead is bright. It's kind of like fixed combination drops, right? Where, we always knew you add one drop to another drop, you get an additive effect, although in that case, it's more like 2 + 2 = 3. The question now for MIGS and medicines, especially with the second concept with cytoskeletal relaxing agents, is that with these things put together, is it going to be 2 + 2 = 3, 4, or 5? Thank you.